Hi, I'm Annalisa Dahlgren. I teach ninth grade AP Human Geography in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, which is a suburb of Madison. And I'm going to talk with you a little bit about FRQs and advice for you and your students about preparing for the FRQs on this year's exam. At my school, I run an AP Human Geography mentor program where previous students who took the class as ninth graders offer advice and facilitate study sessions and give support to current students. So as I was preparing for this webinar, I reached out to this year's class of mentors, 43 former students, for advice and insight about preparing for the FRQ. And their answers led me to these 5 ideas. Know what to expect, know the task verbs, write complete answers, know the terms, and practice, practice, practice. So over the next few slides, you'll see direct quotes from my student mentors who can offer student voice about the FRQ and the process of preparing for the FRQ. The first way to prepare is to know what to expect. The format of the FRQ is standard and predictable. The order of the FRQs is also predictable regarding the number of stimuli they'll see in each question. The FRQ is written in blue or black ink by hand. We talk also in my class about thinking about the FRQ as 3 FRQs, but also as 21 short answer questions, which can be helpful to explain the task at hand with a little more clarity. My students also say that visually seeing previously released FRQ booklets is really useful just to get a feeling for what the actual questions look like when they're all stacked next to each other. And as you've already heard, knowing the task verbs is super important. And to add student voice to what was already shared, students see the impact of discerning the different demands for each verb. Like, this really does matter for students as they reflect back on the AP Human Geography exam experience. Clearly going over this with students is so important so that they know exactly what each type of prompt requires. So in short, students benefit from internalizing the differences in the task verbs that they'll see on the exam. Write complete answers. I think sometimes with my ninth graders, it's a challenge to get them to explain their ideas fully and completely. I encourage my students to use because and for example frequently to add support to their writing. We also talk about how the teacher who scores their work is very likely unfamiliar with our local community, so how important it is to give context if they're using an example to illustrate what they know that's from our local community. The bottom line is that the teacher who's scoring their work doesn't see the good work that they've done all year in class. So the more details they can add to make the case that they know what they're talking about, the better. Know the terms. The reality is that FRQs will rely on an understanding of specific vocabulary from the class. Studying vocabulary using Quizlets or reviewing your notes from class or quizzing a friend can and will help students on both the multiple choice and the FRQ sections of the exam. Practice, practice, practice. There are so many practice opportunities that are available for students. Sometimes in my class, we carve out time to do individual practice on FRQs in class. And these can be whole FRQs with 7 parts or shorter ones pared down to just 3 or 4 parts. They can be practices from released exams or from AP Classroom or from alternate sources. Sometimes we do them individually. Sometimes we do them with a friend and share the pen, alternating sentences. And sometimes I record a formative grade and sometimes it's just in-class practice. But the more we're practicing, the more confident we get with the task verbs and explaining our ideas. Practice also helps students feel more confident with the timing on the AP exam. For my students, this is probably the first real timed test where they've been up against the barrier of the clock at the end. So budgeting about 25 minutes for each FRQ is very much a learned skill. And providing different practice opportunities can definitely help make students feel more confident about their own timing as they complete the AP exam. And then finally, some practice happens during class, but it can also be an individual study choice that students can make. We use some optional Saturday practice exams for students so that they can get the experience of practicing writing 3 FRQs back to back to back. I also have students who use review books, apps like iScore5, and the released exam site just to get even more exposure and practice with FRQs.